Welcome to the Book Editor Show. Today we are reviewing the book Writing the Breakout Novel by Donald Maass. If you are ready to move forward with your professional editing, stop by thebookeditorshow.com. We can help you in every stage of your work, from pre-production, developmental editing, copy editing, to proofreading. Stop by today and let us know how we can help you build a better book. I'm Clark Chamberlain, and it is rumored that when George R.R. Martin couldn't figure out how to finish his book, The Game of Thrones, he took a secret meeting in England with the Earl of Editing. And of course, his advice was kill them all. And here he is, my friend and co-host, the Earl of Editing, Peter Turley. Peter, how's it going today?
That is a fine title. That's second only to like Hand of the King, I think.
I think it is. So, and I didn't realize that. I just had found out about this. So we have a new person to blame for all the deaths in the Game of Thrones series.
Okay, I'll shoulder some of that then. Okay.
So how's the week been?
I mean, there's plenty to go around, isn't there? There's plenty.
There is. You could just take a couple of them. He could have a couple of them. So
yeah, we'll share the heat. It's been a good week. Yeah, it's been a week. It's been a packed week. I know we were just talking off air. It's been one of those weeks where it seems like the dominoes come down one thing after another. But it's kept me busy. It's been a good week. What about you?
Also a busy week, where things have kind of fallen apart. I've got the Salt Lake Comic-Con coming up this week. And yesterday, my hotel, I used the Airbnb, and they contacted me and they're like, sorry, we sold the property and you're going to have to find a different place. And it's only a couple weeks from now. And so like everywhere else was booked. And so I was trying to find something that wasn't too far away. And then they changed my flight on an October conference that I'm going to, and that's not working. So anyway, it's been a lot of that kind of fixing.
Yeah.
And, it's been tough because that makes it difficult, like when life gets in your way of like actually trying to get
it's so
creative
rude,
work done. It's rude. It's like I make these plans and then they get changed.
Because I've had so many like creative things that needed doing this week, and it's like I've just not had a chance to get to them, and it's like life just stop it. It's I'm so British sometimes though, when you're like, how's your week been? And I'm like, I'm kind of just saying, yeah, terrible, but it's been a good week.
Always look on the sunny side,
That's it.
I just got a huge delivery. 250 of the Hank Hudson and Anubis books showed up from the printer today, or not today, but this week, and that's been cool. Because that's really going to be the hard push release for that book. Of course, you can get it now, and right now on Amazon, you can go there. You can read the first few chapters, and if you like it, buy the book. If you hate it, buy the book, and then give it to someone you hate.
Why not?
Why not? But it's fun seeing that stuff come together. And actually, the book that we're going to be talking about today, I got his workbook, because there's two versions of this. There's the regular book, which is what we're going to be reviewing, and then you can also get a workbook of this. And the workbook is what I went through when I was in Iraq. I was working on my first novel, and really it taught me a lot about how to make a book that really engages readers. And so I'm excited to talk about this one today.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing. It's not kind of just saying how to. I know we were saying this earlier, how to write your story. It's how to write a good story. And and in that commercial sense, which, engagement is a major factor.
Right. So, and Donald Maass, he is a 20-year veteran he's a literary agent, so, his business is all about being able to find good work that's going to be able to sell well, that's going to be able to be commercial and be successful. So if that's your aim, and of course, there's no right or wrong way. If you just like to write for yourself, that's awesome, and we hope to always help you out as well. But if you're looking to be able to be commercially successful, this is a guy that you should be listening to. So,
yeah, and I do like how he's kind of like, that's right there on the jacket. It's not like what you're getting with this book. Writing the Breakout novel, you're not going to pick it up and just look for general writing tips. You are looking for commercial writing tips, and it is good that is obvious from from the get go that you know what you're getting with this book.
hmm And one of the things you're going to find in here is at the end of each chapter, it goes through a checklist, and this is really great. So that you can be using this in your manuscript. So although this is not specifically written for editing, this one, his workbook is specifically written for editing. But you could take this one from any level, whether you're just starting off your novel or you have one that's finished, you have a finished manuscript, and you want to be able to go through this. And this is a really good checklist, so you can go through and say, is this working? Is this something that that an agent would be interested in? Is this something that's going to have a place to engage with audiences? And it's just filled with great information. And I know we do reviews on this show, like occasionally, but we only review books that we actually like.
Yes, that is true.
So if you're looking for negative reviews, you're not going to find them here. So, but we're not going to show you stuff that's no good.
30 minutes on like why we hate something, unless we like review Transformers.
We could start doing that.
Which we could do. That's a thought.
We could have a secondary show, the Michael Bay review show. So, all right. So I wanted to talk. I've got a few chapters here, Mark, that I'd want to talk about a couple ideas in here. And from the first one is the idea of premise. And so the first thing that he jumps into is, is that you need to be able to make sure that that what you're building is actually something that's going to work from the beginning. And a couple of the things that he suggests in here, like making sure is that the breakout premise has plausibility, its inherent conflict, originality, and gut emotional appeal. And so, like the idea that first that it's plausible, like, is this something that can happen? That idea that you're going to be able to have a first connection with your reader where they are okay with the story, where they're like, yep, I'm good with this, and they can suspend enough disbelief, to engage in it. If it's too far-fetched, of course they wouldn't do it. It has that inherent conflict. It has it built in between the characters, between the setting, between the plot conflicts. Like everything that comes in here already has amazing conflict. Originality, that one there is like I think that's difficult, to like find something that's truly unique and original. Everything is already been done before, it's pieced together, but at the same time that you're taking something and maybe twisting it, making it a little bit different, making it yours. And then, of course, gut emotional appeal. And that's the one that I talk a lot about in some of the courses I've put together, and also the research I've done. Is that's why people read, is because they get connected emotionally. And so, like, if you're trying to figure out who your audience is and who you're writing that book for, you really need to like get down into the demographics. Are you writing for children? Are you writing for teens? Are you writing for adults? If you're writing for adults, are you writing to 30 somethings, 40 somethings? And so you really try to figure out what will, as I always say, punch them in the gut. And that emotional connection that you're going to find there between the reader and the protagonist and the story.
Yeah, and it's that he tells you that these are the things that you need to do, but it does go into sort of great detail, like how you can do this. For example, the originality part, which is obviously the hardest of the four, I would say, to have an original idea. But he does touch on ways that you can go about doing this, such as like cross genres. So, mixing two genres together, or combining two ideas, like collapsing them into one. And he does have some things that you can do to try and achieve this. And obviously, as many of these things that you can tick, the closer you're going to get to having something that's commercially successful. Because as you say, it's hard to do, isn't it? And especially that one is striving for an original idea, because essentially, is there anything new left out there?
Exactly. And, like one of the things he talks about in here is one of the things you can do with this is the what if game, and I'll just read just a quick little section in here, and it's playing the what if. Time-tested development tool is a way of escalating stakes, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Adding layers to plot and character and opening new thematic dimensions. So where is our story set? ghetto elementary school? Too obvious. Let us do the opposite. Give our protagonist advantage that do not, unfortunately, help him towards his goal. Let's make him white and send him to an exclusive prep school where he has high-minded teachers, supportive friends, and an athletic staff that is dedicated to helping him reach his highest potential, but it's not enough. Because what the setup's going to be is something completely different. And so, like you look at your idea, and then you try not to make it obvious. You try to switch things up, so that you can come up with something different. It's that whole what if. Well, what if we did this instead?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit. This is from a later chapter, but I think this kind of like mentality applies to a lot of his methods. He says. In regard to when he's world building, he says, change one thing and then project the implications of that change in as many different ways as you can. And I think it's like that, like, what if this happened? Or, what little thing can I change that would ripple through the entire story and have that original edge to it?
Mm-hmm. And that kind of just leads us right into another chapter. It's called Stakes. And really this, when I was going through the book 5 years ago for the workbook, this was the one that really like connected with me and it stuck with me for a long time. And that's the idea, that you're always raising the stakes, that, that you put your protagonist into trouble and then you ask yourself, well, how can I make this more difficult? And you start locally with him or her, the protagonist, and say, what are they most connected to, and if I put one of their family members in danger, that's going to raise the stakes. Well, what if I make the stakes even bigger and the town that they live in, and I make the entire town placed in danger, and how could I raise those stakes more? And this is what you do, is you keep asking yourself how you can make the situation more and more difficult, because as we do that throughout the story, then that's going to continually connect with the reader. I can remember, reading Rainbow Sticks by Tom Clancy. And of course, he was trying to represent an elite fighting force, that's made up of the world's most elite soldiers. And of course, you want them to be successful, but they were always so successful that it was a little bit difficult to engage with, because it was like they couldn't fail, and so in a lot of the earlier parts of the work. And that's the kind of thing you want to get away from, is you want to make sure that you're always putting more trouble in front of the protagonist and adding to it, and not making it obvious, like continually asking, what can I do to raise these stakes?
Yeah. And he talks about a few different types of stakes, like the public stakes, personal stakes, and escalating, like the stakes. And an interesting one for me when I read this, which is kind of stuck, is he sort of says, we always think when we're considering raising the stakes, because this is a known thing in the writing community and editing community. How can I raise the stakes? That's a question we've probably all asked. But I think a great one is then he says, okay, so how am I going to raise the stakes? And then when would be the worst time to raise the stakes? So it's like, not only how can it be worse, but when can it be worse? And it's always just nudging it that little step further, because obviously I think you don't go from your situation to then how it's going to be bad. It's because it can be hard to just have that great idea. So I think taking those baby steps and being like, how can it be a little bit worse? And then, okay, so then what would make that worse? And then if I did this at a different point or different time, would that make it a little bit worse? And just constantly kind of piling something on a little bit at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if we immediately, let's take a look at Harry Potter, for example. If we immediately have him fighting Quirrell, like at the beginning of the book, we're not shaping that properly. We're not adding those elements in. Instead, the book is really set up. The first problems he has is with his family, and then the next problems he has is with school. And then the next problems he has is with, fighting the troll. And like all these types of things move along, and each one becomes a bigger obstacle to overcome. And of course, coming at the worst possible times.
I love how well you know the plot events of that story.
I've been been secretly working on the first book on a little project with it to go through and say what works in Harry Potter and by chapter and why. So I've been really into it the last few months.
Yeah. Is this just a personal project?
It's just a personal project right now because I can't figure out the commercial aspect of it because I don't have permission to like talk about it on that big of a deal. So anyway, so I'm trying to figure it all out. Let me read just a little piece from Stakes, and I like this one because he says your own stakes. Making your reader care is first and foremost a matter of ensuring that you, the author, care. A key question to ask yourself is this: why am I writing this novel? And then a second necessary question is the following: if I stopped writing this novel, why would that matter? And if the answer to that second question is I won't get published, or I will have wasted my time, or worst of all, I will miss my deadline and forfeit my delivery advance, then you are writing your novel for the wrong reasons. It likely lacks fire. Some essential driving force is missing. Your convictions are weak. Building them up is a matter of building up your beliefs. Some say success as an author requires a big ego. I say that it requires a big heart. And so I love the idea that, even we as authors need to look at why it is that we're writing. Why does it matter? And where are our stakes involved in the work that we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, because not only are we writing a powerful story because it means a lot to us, but we are injecting personal values and beliefs into that story that people are going to relate to and engage with. And that's what drives a story that gets shared. And he talks a lot about the importance of one of the major factors of a breakout novel is shareability and word of mouth. And it is these the fact that the story means something to us first and foremost as a writer and as a person, and that way we can kind of ensure that it's going to mean something hopefully to someone else.
And if you're listening to a lot of indie podcasts right now on indie publishing, well, even in the professional publishing community as well, or I should say the old guard publishing community as well. The idea of writing to market, that's a term that gets tossed around a lot, and that may be a little confusing because we say, well, do I want to write something that I care about, or do I want to write something that sells? And the idea of write to market is like taking like analysis right now of what's popular and writing that. And that's not what I want to talk about. I do want to talk about, writing something that I care about and also has the ability to sell. And this book is going to help you figure that out, because you can have something that you're passionate about and have something you care about, you can put your heart into. This is going to help you figure out how you can tweak the little parts, the little pieces that are going to have the most engagement with the reader and be able to be a sellable product.
Yeah, definitely. I was sort of thinking as I was looking through it and reading the book that it's the ingredients of a breakout novel, isn't it? That you can take kind of like as a bit of a recipe and apply to a story that you care about.
Yes, and jumping forward to characters, and this is one of the real big things, is that we can have a plot that's really exciting and has big explosions and time bombs and all this kind of stuff that's going to be happening, but that's not really the thing that's going to be shared. That's not the thing that's going to emotionally connect. And we want to talk a lot about characters, and he's got a great section on characters. One of the ones that really I'm interested in, is the idea that we have depth of character, not only for our protagonists and our heroes, but we have depth of character for our antagonists. That our villains have multiple sides that that we can identify with as well, while still being able to hate them.
Yeah, and George R.R. Martin, to go back to him, says a lot about this, doesn't he? Kind of like that everyone's a shade of grey, and in this book, Donald Maass says when writing characters, try to consider what's extraordinary in the ordinary. And I just think that's like that's so powerful. And, you know, when I think of sort of great characters or characters that have kind of stuck in my mind, they have been relative. I mean, like, to go back to Harry Potter, you know, a relatively ordinary person, but it's the things that make him extraordinary from his ordinary, like, you know, his courage and his love for his friends. You know, it's not necessarily his ability with the wand, or, you know, his magical prowess, because he's not the greatest wizard, really. It's you know, it's what's extraordinary in his normality that really grabs us, because, you know, it becomes something that we can strive for, and, you know, and again make that connection personally to us. Obviously, it's hard to connect to an all-powerful wizard, but you can connect to an ordinary person plucked from their day-to-day life and then becomes extraordinary.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the characters, that's where you're really at. And that we have characters like with our protagonists, that they still have issues that we can identify with, the problems in life. But then, yeah, they're overcoming them, because I think that's one of the things that we want most of all as humans, you know, as ourselves, when we look at ourselves, is that we do want to be overcoming these things. And that's why we turn to stuff like great books, because maybe we don't have the power to do that in our own life, but we want to read about that because it excites us and it engages us in a way that maybe we're not able to do on our own right now in life. And that's some of that real power, you know, story is power here. And that you can get into with this, and that's that complex relationship for the characters. One of the cool things that you can do, you know, that he talks about in this book, you know, is building the cast of characters. You know, right now it's really popular having multiple point of view, and that idea of the gray, right? You know, that you don't put that in there. And I followed his advice on this with Another Day, Another Name, you know, and that I've got 4 main characters that you go between, and really, like, yeah, they all have their little bit of gray side on them, and you're not sure who the bad guy and the good guy is. And it's fun to be able to put that stuff before an audience and let them make the decisions and let them connect to the characters and figure out what they believe.
Yeah, I like that. That you touched on the viewpoints there, and there's a bit in the book where he says, you know, that the multiple viewpoints are currently so popular because it's so representative of, you know, modern day life. And he says that, you know, our lives intersect, interact, and overlap, and you know, that's kind of like mirrored in having subplots and multiple viewpoints, and it lends this sense of connectivity that we do have in our everyday life. And he also says to kind of go back to the characters. He says, I just want to quote this because it's just a great line. He says, accomplishments already accomplished doesn't hold our attention, but striving to attain the impossible, though, is a struggle from which we can't take our eyes. And I think, you know, it just really resonates that having these characters that, you know, they reflect our lives, you know, they interact and they overlap. And it's an ordinary person struggling to attain the impossible. I just think that that snapshot and that, you know, the character that makes you think of is the really powerful. I don't want to say kind of like tool or technique and make, you know, cheapen it and say, you know, use this as a trick, but yeah, that just stuck in my mind as soon as I read that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, and you could look at these things, you know, as tricks and stuff like that, but it really, at the end of the day, they're not tricks. You know, it's really how we connect. And I did 2.5 years worth of research into trying to figure out how to sell novels. And along that journey, you know, like, was trying to figure out how to get people to read. And there's just, it's amazing, you know, how it's just inherent. It's in our nature to be interested in story. And the stories that we connect with the most are the ones that have emotional connection to what we've been through. And so that's why, you know, when I talk about that, you know, it's so easy to write a novel for middle grade, because I'm writing to, you know, 9, 10, 11-year-old kids. And so I can look, what do 9, 10, and 11-year-olds go through? You know, what are their emotional triggers that they're having happen to them in their life? It's really easy to look at that and say, yep, they go through, they have a problem with like trying to feel where they are in life, and maybe people don't notice them, and they want to have friendships, and they want to have adventure. And so you can do these different things that will connect with them emotionally, and you have those in your book, and it's going to do that. And so, well, let's take that and move it forward to someone in their 30s. So a person in their 30s, what have they gone through in life? They've probably finished college. They've gotten started into, working, maybe they've had that first job. Maybe they've had that second job. Maybe, they've certainly have experienced love and probably have lost love. And so you start looking at what life experiences those people have gone through, and that you can grab them from that and move forward. And that's not a trick. It's just knowing who your audience is and trying to make an emotional connection with them. And this is going to help you be able to do that and try to figure out, what are those things with characters that do it? What are those things with subplots that are going to be able to really sit there and connect with them on an emotional level?
That is so true. I mean, he says that we choose books based on our values, and that's kind of like what you're saying there, Clark. That people probably are going to reach for books that they can relate to, and there's a character that kind of represents them or what they believe in or what they've been through, because it gives you a mold to fit around, and it can also show you, what lies just on the edge of your ability. What can we strive for, and what can we do if we push ourselves perhaps as far as this character's going to, or what troubles can we endure and come out the other side of? And I think that to me is the power of story, that it gives us a mold that we can then try to fit into, and we can kind of see what can be possible, right on the edge of our existence.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's been reading things like this. It's been reading, the professional papers into why we read that really has excited me and gotten me passionate about storytelling. Because, and this is not in the book, this is just my own stuff. We as authors, we hold a ton of power. Like, do you really realize just how much power you have as an author, how much power you have to connect with a reader and be able to, because once you have that emotional connection, once they're connected, you have the ability to share new ideas that maybe that person hasn't even thought of before, and to be able to begin to change how their point of view fits. You have so much power. And that's, I think, going back to, one of the things in here where he's saying, why are you writing the book? What do you want to do? You can choose to write a book that's just going to be popular and sell well, which is great. Or you could write a book that's going to be popular and sell well and have meaning at the end of it, and connect with something, and have an ability to change things socially that are going on, to make a point in the world. And you just slip it in. You don't slap people over the face with it. You just put it in there and let them make the decision at the end.
Yeah, and I was initially a little apprehensive when I went into this book, and the foreword and the introduction does go quite in depth as to why write the breakout novel. And he talks a lot about the industry, and speculates on, I think this was like early 2000s, and speculates on the ebook and things like that. And at that point, I was a little put off. But he was just making a case as to why it's helpful to have a breakout novel. But then as it really gets into this stuff, it really gets to what you're saying there, Clark, and to the heart of it, and to, just how powerful it is to have a story. And I think you're right. I think that using these techniques that he outlines in these chapters, you can bring your message to the world, and you can bring it through a breakout novel to a wider audience, which after all, is what we want. We don't want to write a book with a great message that just reaches one person. I mean, it's still going to mean something to you, but let's have it break out.
You're not going to break out. And that whole idea is, that you're going to be able to build a large audience from being able to write a book like this. I mean, how many? I think it's something, well, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of books are being published every day now through the miracle of ebooks, that you can, so really what we're talking about, when if you've ever taken a communication class, is that we have a lot of noise, and it's how is it that you're going to be able to get your message from yourself to your audience through all of this noise. And the noise that I'm talking about right now is the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of books that are coming out every single week, and you're going to be able to do that by getting to know one person, like one reader that really gets engaged with it, and they help spread the word, and they tell someone else about it, and they read it. And that's why it matters to put stuff in here that is really going to connect with audiences. And so overall, this book is just fantastic. It's going to help you be able to do that. It's going to help you be able to create great characters, great plot, great theme. And it's going to show you different things that you can go through your manuscript right now to be able to trim down, maybe cut out altogether, maybe something that an element that you haven't added in, and you should really take a look at it and ask yourself if that element's going to help, because when you can get something that really connects with an audience, that's going to help you build your platform and engage with more people.
Yeah. And, I meant to say earlier that this, it's not just speculation. Obviously, he's, what is it, 20 years in the industry or something like that. But also the book itself is absolutely littered with examples, extracts from novels, first lines, examples in everyday life of some of the situations he talks about. But he does back a lot of this stuff up with, time tested examples they're in every chapter basically. So he does outline it, and he does really get into the nitty gritty, and then shows you that, look, this has happened, and this is where it's happened, and you can take a look, and you can just see how it's been done right before.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if it's in this one or if it was in the workbook, but he lists 100 breakout novels that have, from different genres that he's taken from. And so that's a great place that you can go for reference if you're trying to write the next breakout sci-fi book, and take a look what other ones have done and have really connected well with audiences. And that should be some of your research material out there, especially when you're in that editing phase, to make sure that you're hitting those notes right.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see that in this one.
I think that it is in the workbook.
Yeah, I've not worked through that, but that sounds awesome.
Yeah, and you can probably also find that online. I don't know for sure, but if I can find it, I will put it in there in the show notes so that you can have those access to those breakout books. Coming up to the end here, I just want to put my seal of approval on this. This is definitely this and the workbook are ones that you should be reading and that you should be working through, like taking a look at least once as you go through your manuscript. That's just awesome. Like, it's just really solid advice in this book.
Yeah, and again, we were discussing this before. It's one of the most reflective of the industry as it stands today, of writing style as it stands today. It's modern, it's up to date, and it's comprehensive.
Yeah. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, please do. If you're in that manuscript level, I would definitely recommend you just pick up the workbook one, because it'll go through and it's going to ask you questions that you're going to fill out, does your manuscript have this in it? If this was the elements you're looking for, what could you do to raise the stakes? And it's just going to be really helpful for you as you're going through that, and giving you the checklist to make sure that you're hitting the notes right, and having all the elements of a great breakout novel. And you got anything else to add for the show before we wrap this up, Peter?
No, we could go on. I mean, because it's a big book, and as I said, it's full of so much good stuff. But yeah, why spoil it? Pick it up for yourselves and grab a copy. It has to be on your shelf.
Yep, definitely has to. So, and if you good listeners enjoy the show, please leave us a review on iTunes, a like on YouTube, plus on Google. We are also on Stitcher now. So if you like to do the Stitcher app, you can find us there. Also, come by and like our Facebook page, share the show with your author friends, even your author enemies. And if you are an editor who'd like to be a guest on the show, please drop us a line at thebookeditorshow.com. I'm Clark Chamberlain, and for my co-host Peter Turley, keep writing, keep learning, and build a better book.